The ultimatum, the eternal spire floated in the void between galaxies, a testament to the hegemony's power that had endured for 3 million years. Inside its crystalline halls, Supreme Orchestrator Zelthax coiled his serpentine form around the central podium, his scales shifting through colors that no human eye could properly perceive. The emergency session had been called, and representatives from all 47 member species had answered. The vast chamber hummed with barely contained tension. Floating in their atmospheric bubbles, swimming through tubes of liquid methane, or simply existing as patterns of organized energy, the representatives waited. Zelthax's 4 eyes surveyed them all before speaking through harmonic vibrations that translated into each species' language. The humans have become a problem that can no longer be ignored. His words rippled through the chamber like waves on water. In merely 200 cycles since achieving faster-than-light travel, they have claimed 800 star systems. They have ignored every protocol, violated every tradition, and shown complete disregard for the established order that has maintained peace for eons. Representative Quell of the Mechanari clicked and whirred, their crystalline brain processing data at incredible speeds. The mathematical models were clear. Human expansion violated all predictive algorithms. They moved chaotically, settled randomly, and worst of all, they helped other species without permission or oversight. They gave the Corvani spaceflight technology, Quell stated, their mechanical voice carrying no emotion but somehow conveying deep disapproval. A species that had barely discovered agriculture now pilots starships because humans decided they deserved the stars. This disruption of natural progression threatens the very foundation of our society. The ancient Luminar representative, a being of pure thought housed in a containment field, pulsed with agreement. The humans trade with anyone, protect anyone, teach anyone. They make no distinction between advanced and primitive, between worthy and unworthy. Their democracy infects every world they touch. 3 systems in the neutral zone have already requested human assistance in establishing similar governments. Zelthax uncoiled slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement. The situation had progressed beyond mere annoyance. The humans represented something far more dangerous than military might. They represented change, and the hegemony had spent millions of years ensuring that change happened only under their careful guidance. What they have done to the Void Dancers is particularly egregious, added the representative from the Silicon Collective, their crystalline form resonating with harmonics. An entire species that existed in the space between stars, beings we had, classified as non-sentient phenomena, now serve aboard human vessels as navigators. The humans claim they simply learned to communicate with them. Impossible without centuries of study, yet they did it in mere months. The chamber erupted in discussion, dozens of species expressing their concerns in their unique ways. Through it all, Zelthax observed and calculated. The humans were young, barely out of their planetary cradle by galactic standards. Their technology was crude compared to hegemony standards. Their ships numbered in the hundreds, while the hegemony commanded tens of thousands. By every metric that mattered, they should pose no threat, yet they spread like wildfire across the galaxy, not through conquest but through something far more insidious. They spread ideas. They spread hope. They spread the dangerous notion that species could determine their own fate without the guiding hand of their betters. Enough. Zelthax's command silenced the chamber. We will send them an ultimatum. They will cease their expansion immediately. They will submit to hegemony oversight. They will surrender all uplifted species for proper re-education, and they will pay restitution for the chaos they have caused. The Mechanari representative processed this for exactly 0.03 seconds, and if they refuse, probability suggests they will not comply with these demands. Then we will demonstrate why the hegemony has ruled for 3 million years. Zelthax replied. Our combined fleets will overwhelm them. Their scattered colonies will fall one by one. We will restore order as we always have. The vote was called, and it passed with only 3 abstentions. The message was crafted in the formal diplomatic language that had been used for millions of years. Each word chosen to convey the weight of hegemony authority. It listed every human violation in exhaustive detail. It demanded complete submission within 30 standard cycles. It promised swift consequences for non-compliance. As the message traveled through quantum relays toward Earth, Zelthax felt the satisfaction of a problem solved. The humans would either submit or be subdued. Order would be restored. The galaxy would continue its peaceful, controlled evolution under hegemony guidance. On Earth, the message arrived at the United Earth Command Center in Geneva at 3:47 a.m. local time. President Maria Santos was awakened immediately, along with the entire Security Council. Within an hour, every human colony had received the news. Within 2 hours, humanity's response was being formulated. Admiral James Harrison stood before the assembled military commanders of United Earth, both in person and via hologram. The diversity in the room would have shocked the hegemony. Humans from every nation, alongside Corvani pilots with their feathered wings, and void dancers whose forms seemed to exist partially in another dimension. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored allies, Harrison began, his voice carrying the weight of history. The hegemony has given us 30 days to surrender our freedom, our friends, and our future. They expect us to roll over because they're older and stronger. They expect us to fight their way, with massive fleets meeting in grand battles. He paused, a slight smile crossing his weathered face. They're about to learn why humans have a saying. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, but the size of the fight in the dog. The tactical display lit up, showing human space in all its chaotic glory. Unlike the neat, organized sectors of hegemony space, human territory looked like someone had thrown paint at a canvas. Colonies were scattered seemingly at random. Trade routes curved and twisted in patterns that defied conventional logic, and defensive positions were nowhere and everywhere at once. The hegemony thinks in terms of millennia, Harrison continued. They plan their battles like chess matches, with every piece moving according to ancient doctrine. We're going to teach them poker instead. We're going to bluff, misdirect, and when they think they have us figured out, we're going to flip the table. Captain Sarah Chen, commander of the Experimental Warfare Division, stepped forward. We've been preparing for this possibility since first contact with the hegemony. Every cargo hauler has been fitted with hidden weapon systems. Every mining vessel can be converted to a kinetic bombardment platform within hours. Every single human in space knows their role in the defense plan. But perhaps most importantly, Harrison added, we're not alone. Captain Sky Whisper, would you explain your people's contribution? The Corvani captain spread his wings, a gesture of pride among his people. The hegemony thinks they gave us technology we didn't deserve. They never asked if we wanted to remain groundbound. My people have spent the last 50 years not just learning human technology, but improving it. Our neural integration with ship systems is something the hegemony never imagined possible. A void dancer materialized more fully into visible space, their voice sounding like cosmic wind. The hegemony classified us as non-sentient because they never tried to understand us. Humans did. Now we will show them what it means to fight beings who can exist in 13 dimensions simultaneously. Their sensors cannot track what they cannot comprehend. President Santos connected to the meeting via secure channel from Earth. The diplomatic response has been sent, she announced. We've acknowledged their message and stated our position clearly. Earth and all human colonies remain sovereign territory. Our allies are free beings who chose their path. We will not surrender what we've built together. The room fell silent for a moment as everyone absorbed the weight of what was coming. They were about to face the most powerful military force in known galactic history, with a fleet that was outnumbered 40-1. Admiral Harrison broke the silence. The hegemony has every advantage except one. They're fighting to maintain their control. We're fighting for our freedom and the freedom of our friends. They're fighting to preserve the past. We're fighting for the future. They expect us to meet them in grand battles that they've won 1,000 times before. Instead, we're going to fight in ways they've never imagined. The meeting continued for 6 more hours, detailing strategies that would have seemed insane to any conventional military mind. But humans had never been conventional, and their allies had learned to embrace that chaos. As the admirals and captains dispersed to their commands, preparation began across human space. Children were evacuated from border colonies, but the colonies themselves remained fully staffed. Citizens who had never held weapons began training. Scientists worked around the clock on technologies that bent the rules of physics. And in the space between stars, the void dancers began to sing a song that hadn't been heard for millions of years. A battle hymn from before the hegemony's rise. The countdown had begun. 30 days until the hegemony fleet arrived. 30 days to prepare for a war that would determine whether freedom or control would define the galaxy's future. The hegemony had started this confrontation believing they faced another young species to be brought to heel. They had no idea they had awakened something far more dangerous than rebellion. They had awakened hope, and hope had a human face. Response 29 days had passed since the ultimatum. Supreme Orchestrator Zeltak stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Terran Dominion, as it dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of human territory. Around him materialized the largest fleet the hegemony had assembled in 10,000 years. 15,000 capital ships, each one a masterpiece of technology refined over millions of years. The first sign that something was wrong came from the sensors. Where they expected to find human fleets massed at defensive positions, they found empty space. Where they expected fortified colonies, they found civilian settlements continuing their daily routines as if the most powerful armada in the galaxy wasn't bearing down on them. They show no military presence at all, reported the Mechanari tactical officer, their calculations running through millions of possibilities per second. No defensive formations, no activated weapon platforms, no mobilized fleets. Statistical probability of surrender, 97.3%. Zelthax felt unease ripple through his scales. In 3 million years of hegemony dominance, no species had ever responded to an invasion by doing nothing. Even the most peaceful species had attempted some form of defense. Proceed to the nearest human colony, he ordered. If they have chosen not to resist, we will accept their surrender formally. The fleet moved in perfect formation toward the colony world designated as New Sapporo. As they approached, they detected thousands of vessels around the planet, but none were military. Cargo haulers, passenger liners, mining vessels, and small civilian craft continued their normal operations. Then the first ship transformed. What appeared to be a standard cargo hauler suddenly split apart, revealing weapon systems that shouldn't have been possible on a civilian vessel. Kinetic rounds accelerated to near light speed slammed into the hegemony's lead ships before their shields could adjust. The cargo hauler immediately jumped to hyperspace before return fire could be calculated. All vessels, alert status, Zelthax, commanded, but it was already too late for organized response. Every civilian ship was a weapon. Every peaceful vessel was a trap. Passenger liners deployed swarms of microdrones that attached to hegemony hulls and began eating through them with molecular acid. Mining vessels turned their asteroid-breaking lasers on warships. Even small personal craft carried antimatter charges that they deployed before jumping away. But the chaos was just beginning. The Void Dancers struck next, and their attack was unlike anything in military history. They didn't attack the ships, they attacked the space around them. Reality itself began to twist and fold. Hegemony vessels found themselves suddenly light years apart from their formation, or worse, occupying the same space as their allies. Navigation systems failed as the very concept of direction became meaningless in localized areas. Impossible. The Luminar representatives' thought form fluctuated wildly. They're manipulating dimensional boundaries without technology. No species can do this. From the chaos emerged human military vessels, but not in any formation the hegemony recognized. They appeared individually, struck precisely, and vanished before retaliation was possible. They weren't fighting a battle. They were conducting thousands of individual ambushes simultaneously. Admiral Harrison watched from his hidden command post inside an asteroid that had been hollowed out and converted into a mobile base. The hegemony fleet was reacting exactly as predicted, trying to maintain formation and fight conventionally while reality itself turned against them. Phase 2, he ordered. Across the system, what appeared to be debris from earlier human mining operations suddenly came to life. Thousands of dormant drones, some no larger than a fist, accelerated toward the hegemony fleet. They didn't carry weapons. They carried something far more dangerous. They carried communication devices. Every drone began broadcasting on every frequency, simultaneously. Not military data or weapon codes, but something else entirely. Music, art, literature, philosophy. The entire sum of human cultural expression flooded hegemony communication systems. But mixed within it was something more. The stories of the Corvani's first flight, the dreams of void dancers expressed in harmonics that touched the soul, the hopes of a dozen species that had been told they weren't ready for the stars, shut down all communication systems. Zeltax ordered, but it was too late. Across the hegemony fleet, younger officers and crew members heard something they'd never experienced before. They heard freedom. They heard joy. They heard species choosing their own path rather than having it chosen for them. For beings that had lived their entire lives under the strict order of the hegemony, it was intoxicating. The Silicon Collective representative suddenly spoke, their crystalline form resonating with new harmonics. The humans aren't trying to destroy us. They're trying to change us. Captain Sarah Chen's voice broadcast across all frequencies, somehow cutting through the chaos. This is Captain Chen of the United Earth Fleet. We don't want to destroy you. We want to free you. Every being has the right to choose their path. Every species has the right to reach for the stars when they're ready, not when someone else decides for them. You came here to take our freedom. We offer you yours instead. The battle, if it could be called that, continued. For 6 hours, the hegemony fleet, despite its overwhelming numbers and firepower, couldn't adapt to an enemy that refused to fight conventionally. Human forces struck and vanished. Void dancers turned space itself into a weapon. Corvani pilots performed maneuvers that defied physics because they had learned to think beyond traditional limitations. But the real victory came from within the hegemony fleet itself. 3 species that had been part of the hegemony for millennia suddenly announced they were withdrawing from the battle. They had heard the human message, seen the chaos of freedom, and chosen it over the safety of control. Zelthax watched his perfectly ordered fleet dissolve into chaos. Ships collided as their crews debated whether to fight or withdraw. Communication systems remained flooded with human culture, and every attempt to shut them down failed because the void dancers kept opening new dimensional channels. Supreme Orchestrator, the Mechanari tactical officer announced, probability of victory has dropped to 0.03%. Recommend immediate withdrawal. Zelthax's scales shifted through colors of defeat. The hegemony had ruled for 3 million years through order, control, and the careful management of lesser species. In a single day, humans had shattered that control not through superior firepower, but through something far more dangerous. They had introduced the galaxy to the virus of freedom, and it was spreading faster than any fleet could contain. All vessels withdraw, Zelthax commanded, the words bitter in his harmonic speech. Return to hegemony space immediately. As the battered and confused hegemony fleet retreated, Admiral Harrison opened a channel to the Supreme Orchestrator. This doesn't have to be the end, Admiral Harrison said. The galaxy is big enough for both order and chaos, for both control and freedom. We don't want to destroy the hegemony. We want to coexist with it. You can maintain your space and your traditions, but you will no longer dictate to others how they should live. Zelthax considered this for a long moment. You have won this day, human. But the hegemony has existed for millions of years. We will adapt. We will return. We'll be ready, Harrison replied. But maybe next time try talking to us first instead of demanding surrender. You might be surprised what we can accomplish together. The connection ended and the hegemony fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving human space for the first time in their history as the defeated party. But in their wake, they left something unexpected. 3 species worth of ships that had chosen to remain, to learn what freedom meant, to explore what they could become without the hegemony's guidance. In the following months, the galaxy changed in ways the hegemony never could have predicted. The story of humanity's victory spread not through conquest but through communication. Species that had been kept primitive began reaching for the stars. Ancient civilizations that had stagnated for millennia began to innovate again. The rigid order that had defined galactic civilization for eons began to crack and shift. The hegemony retreated to their core systems, building new defenses and trying to understand how they had lost to a species barely out of their stellar cradle. They had possessed every advantage except one. They had forgotten that sometimes the youngest child asks the questions that change everything. They had forgotten that chaos could defeat order not through destruction, but through transformation. Humanity and their allies continued to expand, not through conquest but through invitation. Every species that wanted to join them was welcomed. Every civilization that chose freedom was supported. The galaxy was no longer divided between the advanced and the primitive, the worthy and the unworthy. It was divided between those who chose their own path and those who had it chosen for them. The war that the hegemony had started to maintain control had ended with the birth of something new. Not a new empire or a new order, but a new possibility. The possibility that species could work together as equals, that freedom and order could coexist, that the galaxy was big enough for every dream, and in the space between stars, the void, dancers sang their ancient battle hymn, but now it had new verses. Verses about humans who had looked at impossible odds and chose to fight anyway. Verses about freedom that spread like wildfire through the cold dark of space. Verses about the day the galaxy learned that sometimes the smallest dog has the biggest fight. The hegemony had threatened Earth with ultimatum. Earth had responded with revolution. And in that response, the galaxy had found its future.